My name is Shirley Self, and I'm here to talk astrology. And tonight I'm going to continue my discussion of the journey of the soul, according to William Butler Yeats. And we've come to moon phase 16, having finished the darkness in which the person is rebuilt to his own ideal and reborn anew. This is the purge of the past here, and the bringing to the light a new will, one built to one's own ideal, the will now built. And these people are very much ruled by the ideal, and very much guided by that ideal. So we've come to 16, which is of the rectangle of actualizing potentials. Oh wait, here's 16. The actualize, it's got 2, 28, 16, and 14. The mask over here is 2, that energetic 2. The creative genius, which is very important to these phases. The creative genius becomes the primary focus for these people up here. So this is the obsessed moon phase 14. And the body of fate is over there at the full, moon phase 28. So this is the, you can find 16 on your horoscope. It's, we're coming into the waning moon now. The full moon was right here. And so moon phase 15 occupied the first 24 hours after the full moon. And moon phase 16 will occupy the next 24 hours. And so moon phase 16 starts at, 13 degrees after the full moon. So you can find it on your horoscope. And that phase 16 runs from 13 degrees to about 25 degrees. So we're into the third quarter, the air quarter, where the desire for power replaces the desire for self-knowledge. This quarter was very self-involved, and they were busy rescuing and perfecting their own creative potential. And now in the air quarter, that creative potential is hauled off into the world in a very active way. These are politicians, teachers, lawyers, judges. The third quarter will use this creative intellect to teach and gain power over others. They want to influence and master reality. And so here we are at the waning moon. We're at the waning moon now. So the energy is going down. And as the moon approaches the dark of the moon, the energy is reduced. Physical energy gets lower and lower and lower. So, but what we have here is air, intellectual energy, ideas. This is 16 is where the wrath of the Demogorgon now is dumped into 16 and is going to be made creative. It was made sensible in this quarter. It was made intelligible in this quarter. And now it's going to be made creative. So moon phase 16 is absolutely flooded with ideas. Their power lies in the imagination, but they are easily overwhelmed by the imagination. They are they've built themselves to their own ideal. And now that ideal person is, the job of 16 is to create an ideal life. Now that's the best outlet they can have for their overactive imagination, is to pursue that unique ideal life, the one that's close to their heart, the one that is important to them, and that'll keep them sane, because it's going to take a lot of work. They'll need their obsessive creative genius here to focus and concentrate this wild imagination. Concentrate on the life he wants. The body of fate over there, the environment will work against him. Now, what's happening here is that the ideal person expects that the world will respond ideally. This is a dangerous illusion. Yeats calls it the myth of outer perfection. And that means that just because I think I am perfect, and because I am perfect, that the world will respond to me in a perfect way? No. No. The world is the world, and couldn't give a rat's ass, to tell you the truth. And this illusion will haunt these people here and handicap them, because they're just going to be totally astonished at how they have to fight the world to do and to get what they want. The world doesn't appreciate their ideal person. It just takes advantage of them. And that's tends to be because what these people want is well, look, we're Aquarius. We're still in Libra here. But this is the Aquarius decadent moving into Gemini. And so that the life that 16 wants is not in the normal run of things. And because it's outside the norm, it has to be virtually created with whole cloth. And this is a terrible conflict. It's always a struggle against the current. Always. They have to try to achieve an ideal life in this imperfect world. They don't have, because they have more mental energy than physical energy, they really need this obsessive mask. They need this obsessive creative genius to guide them and to tell them what it is they're going after. But they need the mask over here. This begin energy over here at phase 2 was, if you will remember, physically wild. But they need that physical activity. They need the physicality of the mask to keep them busy and to ground them, keep them from being lost in fantasy. And it's to help them find creative outlets for their overactive imagination. He needs to be active, always active in his quest for his ideal life. Otherwise, he gets morose and cranky. The satisfaction of accomplishing things will help him to control that wild imagination. Once he gets lined out, uses the focus that comes from Moon Phase 14, the creative genius, uses that focus, it will, accedes to the energy that comes to him, that comes to him from his inspirations, stays busy. And also he needs some activity that's not goal-oriented. And just like Moon Phase 2 was very good at aimless wandering. And he used it to good effect. And Moon Phase 16 needs a little bit of that. Mostly some release from the tension of their constant self-judgment. And they need some sport, some dance, something that, physical. And that's the way they can maintain their psychic and their mental health. Out of phase, they'll be inert. Inertia is for a 16 to be out of phase. These people need to... they need to indulge in creative action in their own ideal direction. Otherwise, they get real melancholy and sad, develop this jaundiced view of reality that is not helpful to them. It's a problem with 16, 17, and 18 is that they can succumb to what Yeats calls an intellectual despair, a hopelessness. Phase 16 can be subjected to the most profound example of this hopelessness. It's total passivity, total subjectivity, just total give it up, give it up. If they get lost in fantasy without the energy to escape, then they will indulge in hatred. That's the curse of the air quarter. And Oh, Yeats calls hatred emotional self-deception due to self-pity. I like that. Emotional self-deception due to self-pity. Anyway, let me have a sip of water. What will happen to these out of phase 16s is that they'll take on the worst of their body of fate over their, they'll become cunning and cruel. These people can be really sly and sleazy. I mean, when they go bad, they can be, these people, because they're full of hatred and have access to all this rage, can be menacing and intimidating. Anyway, they can be very unyielding in their hatreds. They can see the world in black and white. Now, the creative genius has an awful lot of tolerance it can bring to moon phase 16. And that can temper their rage and their constant rush to judgment. And also hatred can be purged by suffering. And the daemon will bring that in spades. Anyway, the ideal life is totally up to 16. He's got to be willing to work for it. The world does not give it to him. To stay in balance, remember we got the two brains here that are working together. We're actually learning to work together. Learning to work together. Anyway, the balance between them is a constant struggle. There's an oscillation between the solar and lunar minds that goes on. Too solar, too practical. The inventive imagination is totally wasted, and that will lead to a tremendous amount of frustration. And the mind will actually become paranoid and kind of desperate. Too lunar, too right-brained. He lives totally in the imagination, and his life will fall apart, and nothing gets done. They need to stay busy, keep busy, and that calms the mind. These people have really strong convictions, strong beliefs that they are right to own those ambitions that they have, those personal ambitions. And that's a good thing, because their life is a struggle. Their lover, must be close to the ideal and must really kind of go along with them. Be a companion, be a true believer in this life that is to be built here. Otherwise, it don't work. It don't work. And these people, they're really hard to live with. They're kind of haughty. They're kind of well, they've become, they're ideal. They're ideal people, and it makes them a touch proud. Yeah, just a touch proud. A little arrogant, maybe. The Aquarius out there help them do that. Anyway, that's our moon phase 16. Here's the main card for 16 and moon phase 2. This is the sun. And I like this sun for moon phase 16 because it shows the mind, the joined mind. She's standing there in the water, and he's standing there on earth, and they're together, and they're working together, and they're growing. Experience is the best teacher. Experience is the best teacher. This is also a card of creativity or fertility, if you will. These people have powerful instincts, and this is actually a card of the highest level of the human intellect. Let's look at the Kabbalah here. And here we are at the sun, and it connects the moon and Mercury. So there's that would explain it right there. This experience needs to happen here. Remember, these people are just starting off into the world, and to experience the world is their meat and bread. So the sun has to do with the discovery of personal potential. And I was going to say, this is the best card for moon phase 16. But the other one, the one from the weight deck, it has the little guy riding his horse. And that's actually the best one for moon phase 2 because it more describes what he's doing, learning to ride his horse. So, and I don't have that one. It's my tarot's in the other room. So the other card we have for, this is for the creative genius and the body of fate, is the High Priestess. And she is, you know, the waves of thought forms. And the thought forms are what Moon Phase 16 has to learn to control. This is a solitary journey, and so that's one of the reasons why Moon Phase 16 has to have somebody with him that goes along with him, because it doesn't need a lot of argument here in his life. So let's look at a Moon Phase 16. This here is, does that show up pretty good? That's Jack London. His data is he was born the 12th of January in 1876 at 2 p.m. in San Francisco, California. Okay, this is John Griffith Cheney, otherwise known as Jack London. His ascendant is ruled by Mercury, you'll notice, which is exalted in the 9th house of exploration. His midheaven is ruled by that Saturn in Aquarius, which is conjunct the Venus. And he tried everything. He was an adventurer. An interesting thing is that he was, his birth father left his mother before he was born. And his mother married a man named John London, before Jack was even a year old. And so Jack was like about in his early 20s when he discovered this, that John London was not his father. And I'm thinking that's probably, notice the Mercury there, and that is knowing myself. The Mercury there hit that Saturn by solar progression around age 21. Now that's the way you can kind of check out when things happen in your life, is you can just measure the distance between various planets. And things will happen to you when around the time those planets conjunct or oppose or square. Like I've said before, when I was 2.5, well, almost 3, my family and I moved into a haunted house. That was when my solar progressed moon hit my Pluto. So anyway, and at the same time for Jack London here, while Mercury is hitting his Saturn, then Neptune has progressed to Pluto. And Pluto over there is in opposition to Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Scorpio, and Scorpio says, know thyself, that I might be powerful. And so at that time, Jack obtained a deeper knowledge of himself. So his history is really interesting. He briefly went to UC in Berkeley, and which he called a passionless pursuit of passionless intelligence. And he educated himself. By passionate pursuits, actually. His midheaven, notice, is in Aquarius. He's got that Saturn and Venus conjunct there. And that Venus rules the Pluto. The Pluto is actually his creative genius. And the Jupiter is, of course, the body of fate then, because it's in opposition. So many of the things he worked at, oh man, he was a laborer and a factory worker. And then someone who really liked him bought him a boat. And he lived in San Francisco. and he became an oyster pirate in San Francisco Bay. The king of the oyster pirates, he was called. And and after he was put in jail for being an oyster pilot, he became a member of the California Fish Patrol. And since he'd been such a good pilot, he was a very good fish patrolman. He was a sailor. He loved sailing. And notice the Mars and the North Node up there in the House of Exploration and in the 11th house. That Chiron in the 11th house, you know, that is over there. It shows that he felt he had needed to escape a restricted life. And truly he did. And he's Gemini rising, and typical of Gemini risings, Gemini Sag rising, he married twice. And the first marriage was pretty conventional. And it was that South Node in Libra doing what other people expect him to do down there in the 5th house. And that didn't last long, although he had two daughters from that marriage. And eventually he had to leave. And married another woman who was much more adventurous and much more a companion to him. And together they sailed the world. He was a gold prospector in the Klondike. He was a journalist in the Russo-Japanese War and in the Mexican Revolution. And he was a socialist and an advocate for women's suffrage. That moon, Uranus in Leo, right down there on the nadir. His creative genius over there, that Pluto, is ruled by the Venus of unconventional and radical values. And that could explain, and freedom. And socialism does promote a certain freedom for the common man. Less freedom for the rich, but a lot of more freedom for the common man. And so he advocated that all over San Francisco. He would preach all over San Francisco. And very, very intelligent man. Look at the Mercury up there in at 3 Aquarius. In the 9th house of communication and philosophy. Okay, he eventually settled down in a ranch outside Glen Ellen, California, which is now a park. He wrote, now I had a whole list of people who were moon phase, and I've lost it. Oh, I found it. Excuse me. It floated away in the breeze. Okay, my favorite story by Jack London was called To Build a Fire. And it was a short story because the guy didn't last long because he failed. Anyway, Moon Phase 16 is incredibly creative. And just listen to this lineup. We've got Coco Chanel, Charlie Chaplin, Mary Baker Eddy, Barbara Kingsolver, Iris Murdoch, Gertrude Stein, Gore Vidal. I miss Gore Vidal. I liked him a lot. He was fun. Here at Moon Phase 16 is the adventure here of the mind. And the daring do of the high priestess that dares to cross the death by herself, actually. Okay, next time, Moon Phase 17. Until then, I hope you feel blessed.